Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of What Christian Teens Need. I'm your host, Landry Chisholm. I'm a teenager just like you, and I love praising the Lord, and I love being a Christian. Today, we're going to go over to Dad, who's going to talk to us about
finances.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks, son. Appreciate you. Thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to be a part of the show. Good morning, everyone. My name is Troy Chisholm. I am a healthcare administrator. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And most of all, I am a Christian. And I want to be able to talk to you young people about the concepts of financial well-being and knowing that eventually you're going to have responsibility for a household and taking care of the finances of the house. You're going to want to know some basic principles that I believe are going to help you as you go on that journey. One of the first things I want to make sure that I get across to you is the concept that, first of all, when it comes to finances, when it comes to anything related to material possessions, we need to understand that we don't really own anything. It all belongs to God. God is the one who gives us the ability to work and to get wealth and helps us to be able to take care of every need that we have. And so we need to understand that we're just stewards of the financial blessings that God allows us to manage. And so if we approach it from that perspective, I truly believe that we'll be able to really be the type of Christian stewards for financial well-being that God would have us to be. So if we get that concept down and we be able to respond as stewards. So if we're going to be good stewards of God's finances, we need to make sure that we are being responsible with those things that God blesses us with. And so in terms of being responsible, we want to make sure that we are creating a budget, creating a plan so that we can approach our finances from a standpoint of knowledge and making sure that we're deliberate in the way that we manage. And so as we first create a budget, one of the first things we want to do is make sure that we start off with contributing to the local church, making sure that we set aside our offering in keeping with what God has blessed us with. And so we want to make sure that that's the first thing we do. Before we start to look at any of our other expenses, we want to make sure that we are dedicating our hearts and our minds towards giving to God. The Bible also tells us the kinds of attitudes that we need to have as we approach giving to God. We talk about the concepts of being a cheerful giver, not giving grudgingly or out of necessity, as we realize that God loves a cheerful giver. And so when we talk about setting aside the concepts of offering to God, we do so cheerfully and make sure that we do that with the right heart and the right spirit. Once we do that, then we go about the business of taking care of setting up our budget. And so with our budget, we understand that there are really three basic necessities that we have to account for. Again, that's after we've set aside our offering. So first of all, we need some place to live. We've got to make sure that we're in a place that we can sustain ourselves in terms of day-to-day living. So we need a place to live. So that's either going to be rent or a mortgage or whatever situation you find yourself in living. Secondly, you've got to eat. There's no way you can sustain in this life unless you are able to feed yourself. And so you've got to set aside some resources for groceries. Hopefully you won't spend a lot of time eating out. That's more expensive, and that is not really good stewardship for your finances. And so you want to learn to either prepare your meals, go grocery shop, and those types of things. So you want to make sure you set aside for those things. And then the third thing is you're going to have to get around. If you have a job, you're going to need to get to that job. If you are going to school, you're going to need to get to school. And so you're going to need to set aside some finances for your transportation. Now, If you're not driving yet, then that means you're going to need either bus fare, you're going to need to get Uber, you're going to need a train, whatever the case is. But you're going to have to make sure that you've got within your budget the means to get about where you need to go. If you have a car, that's a whole different scenario. You're going to need to buy gas. You're going to need to make sure you've got insurance. You're going to need to make sure that you take care of those necessities of maintenance, oil changes, and then repairs, those types of things. So you want to make sure that in your budget that you've got those things accounted for. And so whatever you are taking in from your job when you are getting your paycheck, you want to make sure that you account from your paycheck for those things that you have. Okay? Make sure that you're taking care of whatever bills that you have accumulated over that period of time, so that you don't end up in a situation where you have more month at the end of your money. And so you want to make sure that you've got more money at the end of the month. And then you make sure that you're able to create kind of a savings plan, because you never know what you're going to need going forward. So you want to make sure that you create a circumstance that you're able to save some of what you bring in, so that you don't find yourself with absolutely no resources should something come up that you need to take care of. Once you've done all of those things, then it's time to look at perhaps some of the things you might want to do. After all, you're young people, you might want to have some fun. You have to figure out how you might want to do that. And you've got to set aside some funding in order to do that. But remember, that's after you do everything else. And that's not necessary. So there may be some weeks or some months where you don't get to do any of that. But if you are wise stewards and you budget appropriately, then you may have the opportunity to do some of those things as well. And so if you're able to set that kind of financial plan in place, then I think you go a long way in being a good steward of what God has blessed you with in terms of finances. So that's just a really brief overview of some of the concepts that will help you to get situated from a financial perspective. Again, make sure that, one, you remember that we're just stewards of what God blesses us with. Two, we want to make sure that we are giving to God in accordance with what He's blessed us with. And then three, we want to make sure that we set an appropriate budget so that we're able to meet the needs that we've created in order to live in this life. If we can take those principal concepts, then that sets a firm foundation for us to be able to manage our finances appropriately. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Thank you again for taking some time to be with us on this show today. And again, thank you, Mr. Lance, for the opportunity and the invitation to be a part of this show. So thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. We see you next time. God bless y'all. Peace.